Hi there, thank you as always for watching my Samurai Japanglish vlog. After the long school closure due to COVID-19, my son is busy spending longer hours at school to catch up the curriculum now. My son used to study at an international school in Malaysia for a year. Looking at his going to school, I felt like telling you guys my new findings regarding the differences of education policies and cultures between Japan and Malaysia. Here you go! First of all, can you guess what this pie chart reveals? Japan has the largest share and Germany counts the second place. Speaking of this combination between Japan and Germany, it might remind you of something like an alliance regarding the World War II. No, it's not the data of warfare. Actually, it's a data regarding the ratio of numbers of companies operating over 200 years by nation. Did you know that? You can tell uniqueness of my country visually here. For your reference, the oldest company in the world is Kongo Gumi in Japan, which was founded in year 578. As a construction company of temples and shrines, it has long been constructing various historical heritage which are described on history textbook today. Sugoi! Yes, this is an emblematic aspect of this country. Japan is a country where organizations last long. In other words, it's a country with people who with social stability or who can't change themselves on their own. In fact, Japan has long been governed by one dynasty substantially or formally for a few thousand years. Surely, every national is more likely to exaggerate their history. But our head of state is not king, but one and only emperor still lost in the world. This is a fact admitted by foreign government today. For your reference, you can recognize here Government of Canada regard our emperor as the top of foreign dignitaries. Yaru ne? Regardless of its stability, each society has its own history with thousands of years. There only exists each own uniqueness. Say Malaysia. Regrettably, it was a history of colonization, which lasted hundreds of years. I thought of the image of Europeans having a taste for tea gently, just beside Malaysians working dripping with sweat in dense forest. It's easy for me to imagine that Malaysians felt labor not virtue, but exploitation. In a society where organizations last long with stability like Japan, those who wish to be successful needed to be evaluated highly within the organization. Namely, they needed to get in good with boss, diligence, obedience, and well-discipline. These are all our virtues which make sense to be promoted. In general, people from a society of so-called more developed tend to regard others as unenlightened and uncivilized. ですね. I stayed in Malaysia as an international mature student at a graduate school in the past years. I must confess with my apologies here that I had confined Malaysian locals dozing off or being addicted to mobile phones while they're working with such bias. I defined it as a kind of disorder caused by eradication of their native culture due to colonization. Here, let me tell you one episode. I stayed in Malaysia with my wife and only son. My son also entered an international school there. When he experienced his new school life for first week, he confessed showing his wallet to us. To be honest, I couldn't have any lunch last week. We were surprised and asked, "How come?" He continued, "Because in my school, nobody wants to queue up at the canteen." On the contrary, senior students and even teachers cutting the queue by force. So, I've never reached a cashier in the end. What an uncivilized behavior! I'm deeply sorry to tell this, but I was really shocked with anger at hearing his confession and shouted such a phrase. As an educational institution, I had believed that the school must be a place for teaching how people care others, especially junior students. And also it should teach them that such harmony brings them to the total benefit of the entire organization by serving lunch effectively in the long run. We believed his confession because we had also seen similar cases of cutting in by adults since we stayed in Malaysia. That spurred on my views of Malaysians with bias. But since I started this vlog, I had opportunities to interact with many Malaysian subscribers and learned new views through this. Especially when I uploaded a video titled "The Reason Why Japanese Are Secretive to Malaysians," some profound comments inspired me a lot. In this video, I dealt with an actual episode based on my experience in Malaysia that Japanese senior residents in Malaysia had difficulty cooperating with Malaysians. Japanese seniors complained that once they teach their skills to Malaysians to work together, Malaysians were apt to get independent from Japanese and become their rivals next day. After uploading this video, I received some comments telling me that Malaysia has culture of entrepreneurship while Japan has that of apprenticeship. Entrepreneurship versus apprenticeship. It was a new way of views that I obtained and a more compelling reason in terms that it has a horizontal structure. Superior culture versus inferior culture, or civilized people versus uncivilized people. I have long been seeking alternative views which has other than such vertical structure to define Malaysia-Japan relationship. In short, Japanese people obtain their success through their promotion within the organization, while Malaysians wish to shift their position from employees to employers out of the organization. In other words, don't let it go at working in the jungle with sweltering heat, but direct them over a cup of tea instead. なるほど。As Japanese, I still believe that it is meaningful and a respectable manner to queue up and give up the junior. But what if it was a society where standing out among others is more respected to become a leader than just obeying blindly to organizations? That makes sense. Which was more suitable in the battlefield? Allegedly, the Japanese army used to die for the order from Emperor with joy. Apprenticeship had the edge without doubt for a role between nations. And then, what about the society of global economy of today, which entails more frequent change of business model? In this case, entrepreneurship is a winner, I guess. According to this viewpoint, you get to know why Japanese has been experiencing the stagnation so-called last 3 decades. In fact, you can hardly expect innovation within communities consisting of the obedient only. So, does Japan have no choice but to fall into a decline? But the history tells us one truth of which this proves. If Japan would stay without any self-transformation, it would be incompatible with the fact that we are still governed under one dynasty. We would have been a dependency to China or Mongolia. In fact, history shows us another aspect of this country. Among the theories of economics, there is a business cycle model called Kondratief. It is a theory that big business cycles are to be repeated every around half century, caused by drastic advances in technical innovations. Likewise, they bring us to historically social changes. For example, think of what happened 75 years ago. It was a year when Japan was reborn as a democratic nation after Japan's defeat in the war against the US. And also think what had happened in Japan by going back to the same period further. Back in 1868, that is 77 years before the Pacific War was over, Japan had achieved a major restoration with transforming samurai feudal society to modern one, increasing military power. During its samurai period lasting over 200 years, Japan had long maintained closed-door policy. But the coming of the black ships by the US made Japan understand the necessity of policy change, and which resulted in Japan's becoming the first industrialized nation in Asia. 75 years ago from now, Japan experienced a lost battle to the US. And 77 years before Japan's defeat in the war against the US, Japan had gone through hardship against the fear of colonization by the Western power. In 1868, surely, the Japanese society consists of numerous stable organizations which are not suitable for frequent changes. But once they confronted with inevitably external pressure, they carried out drastic transformations with unattainable scale and speed by others, and which had occurred periodically as if they were Kondratief cycles. 75 years later than the last turning point caused by the World War II, Japan has been facing another worldwide pressure called COVID-19 now. And the US and China have been attempting to establish respective new world orders. Can Japan cope with it? I hope Japan could get through with it handsomely. Hokkaido, currently where I live, has created a new history over 150 years since the Japanese settled in this new frontier. So Hokkaido might also be facing a turning point. I wish this northern island further success. That about it? How did you like today's video? Oh, my son is gonna come back home from weekend class soon. I got to go to pick him up. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Have a great day! Japan Ballet!